opportunity to look at Hebrews, the end of Hebrews 7 and Hebrews 8. Now we're going to move along to Hebrews 9. I'm a little echoey, but we're going to start today in verse 1 through 10. The first covenant between God and Israel had regulations for worship and a place of worship here on earth. There are 2 rooms in the tabernacle. In the first room, there was a lampstand, a table, and sacred loaves of bread on that table. This room was called the holy place. Then there was a curtain, and behind the curtain was a second room called the most holy place. In that room, there was a gold incense altar and wooden chest called the Ark of the Covenant, which was covered in gold on all sides. And inside the ark, there was a gold jar containing manna, Aaron's staff that had sprouted leaves, and the stone tablets of the covenant. Above the ark, there were cherubim of divine glory, whose wings stretched out over the ark's cover, the place of atonement. But we cannot explain these things in detail right now. When these things were all in place, the priest regularly entered the first room as they performed their religious duties. But only the high priest entered the most holy place, and only once a year. And he offered blood for his own sins and for the sins of people who had committed in ignorance. By these regulations, the Holy Spirit revealed that the entrance to the most holy place was not freely open as long as the tabernacle and the system represented were still in use. This is an illustration pointing to the present time, for the gifts and sacrifices that the priests offer are not able to cleanse the consciousness of the people who bring them. For the old system deals only with food and drink and various cleansing ceremonies, physical regulations that were in effect only until a better system could be established. So, we're still basically on the same conversation that we've been on, right? We're still dealing with Jewish Christians who are facing persecution that are looking back and saying, we didn't have it too bad. We didn't have it too bad under the old covenant. So the author of Hebrews is continuing on to describe in detail the fact that, yes, they are aware of the covenant and they are aware of the trappings that encompass the old covenant. So it goes into a little bit of detail about the temple. Now, interesting thing, as I was researching the layout of the temple, by the way, in 2 weeks, obviously can't do it next week, but I may even have like a little 3D model of the temple. I've got to work one up, but it'll be interesting to take a look so you can understand exactly what's taking place there and some interesting illustrations in regards to that. But by describing the fact that he understood what the interior of the temple looked like, he basically solidifies the fact that he knows what he's talking about. So this is obviously a Jewish person writing to other Jewish individuals. So, when you get into all the different measurements and that type of stuff, this is where we can say we're very happy that he said we can't get into all those details right now. The Jewish law, the Mosaic law that they were under before, was very strict in regards to many things. What you eat, what you wear, the things that you can do, what days you can do those things, what needed to take place. Because of the way the law worked, you'd have priests that were, we've been talking about one yearly sacrifice, but every day, the priests would be giving sacrifices. They would sacrifice a dove for themselves and a dove for the sins of other people. So you would come up to them, you would bring them the birds, they would take one was for them. They would sacrifice this bird and sprinkle the blood over themselves first. Then they would sacrifice the other one, sprinkle the blood for yours. So every day, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of gore going around. It was not a clean process, but it was a cleansing process. Regulations on what you could eat, what you could wear, what you could do certain times, what you couldn't do at other times. It was a very stringent, very controlled environment, as much as it could be. But all of these things, these rituals, these tasks that had to take place, these sacrifices themselves, they all stemmed from one thing. I want you to think back to the garden. In the garden, as the fruit was brought to Adam, as Adam saw, as Adam took, and he ate, what was it that took place in his mind? What clue are we given as to what took place? What happened immediately after? Anybody? What? They hid from God. God came to have his stroll with Adam, to have his stroll with Eve, and they hid from him. And when he called out to them, they answered, because, it's God calling. You want to pick up that call. And he said to them, "Where are you?" And then Adam said, "We are hiding from you." Because of what? They were hiding because they were naked. So all of these rules that we find in the Mosaic Law are all geared towards our physical bodies. Because that is the first thing that we set between us and God. The very first thing that was set between God's relationship with Adam as it was Adam's nakedness, his physicality, his personhood in this skin. I'm going to have a little trouble. It's really hot. My skin is sweaty. So, because that is the barrier that man is placed between God, that is what these Mosaic laws take care of. The sacrifices on a regular basis, the spreading on of blood, the covering of blood, the continuous cleansing. And, heaven forbid you're a woman, because then not only are you cleansing on a regular basis, on a daily basis, but after you have your menstrual cycle, then you're considered unclean for a week, and you have to clean through the bathing process every day for that week, and then remove yourself from society as well. So there's 2 weeks out of every month that you're considered unclean. But everything was geared towards the physical. So the Levitical priests, the way that they conducted things, this shadow of a temple is all based on covering that barrier, taking care of the barrier of the physicalness, our physical bodies, so that we could be in relationship with God. That's the old covenant wrapped up for you. All the blood, all the gore, all the laws, it's all about physical self. Now, Christ came along and he fulfilled all of those physical needs. He fulfilled the law in its entirety. So we are no longer under that law. Well, technically speaking, we're not Jewish. So that law has been fulfilled. It has been complete. Instead of concentrating on the physicality of things, instead of concentrating on your blood and bones and skin, we now are able to have our perspective the way that it's supposed to be. Since the body has been taken care of, since what we eat, what we say, what we do, how many baths we take? Since those laws have been fulfilled, since those have been taken care of, now we're able to focus on what is really important. This takes care of that inverted understanding. Because the world, because we generally think of our bodies first, right? Oh, my body doesn't feel good. This morning, my body didn't feel good. My body was really, really tired. Didn't get a good night's sleep. The coffee didn't even taste good this morning. And it's one of them days. My ankle hurts. My shoulder hurts. I cleaned out my shed yesterday, so I have a few extra scrapes and cuts. These are the things that we notice first of all, because the body is first and foremost in our mind. The body being first and foremost in our mind is the same deal that Adam went through when he partook of the fruit. When he hid from God, his body was first and foremost on his mind. But we have the understanding now that since the law has been fulfilled, since the barrier of our physicality, of our body, is taken care of, we can have first and foremost in our mind our spiritual bodies. That's where the focus should have been to begin with. You see, the barrier that we put between us and God all has to do with our physical bodies. Because, I just don't think that I can get up at 5 a.m. to spend time in the Word. Because my body won't let me do it. Oh, I'd really like to go to Heart Scribe on Wednesday night, but it's at 10 o'clock, and I'm really tired. I've been up since 6. I'd really like to spend time on Tuesday learning basic Bible doctrines, but that's the time that I normally set aside to watch TV, because Tuesday night television is awesome. It's the best night for TV. So me and my physical body and my routine would like to sit down and watch that. It extends beyond our bodies to other physical things then, right? So our favorite television programs, sporting events. Because I know every Super Bowl Sunday, we're spending time watching the game, or, the commercials, which are usually better. We place things that are physical as more important. I, of course, just had the opportunity to be without a car. And, that physical object is something that I really have become used to. The feeling as I'm driving down the road, shifting, because, manual transmission is the way to go. Are you with me on this, John? Right? The control that it gives you over this physical object is great. The speed, stopping power may be an issue sometimes. But this physical object that I've become attached to, and I had the opportunity over the past 2 weeks to not be attached to it and to figure things out. And while it was physically taxing to figure out how to get everybody where they needed to go, I still was able to focus on what needed to be done. None of the tasks that had been set before me went incomplete or unfinished, which is the same as incomplete generally. Everything took place the way that it was supposed to take place. If we take our minds and focus on our physical being, if we focus as a way to keep our physical healthy, if we focus on what we eat, when we do things, where we go, how we get there, if we're clean. Now, I want to make everything clear here. I'm not saying don't eat healthy. I like eating healthy. I love blueberries. Those are really healthy. They are. I like eating a lot of unprocessed foods. I'm not saying don't eat healthy. And I'm definitely not saying don't bathe. Just to be clear. I'm not saying not to have a schedule. But when these physical things, when the care and upkeep of our physicalness takes over the place in our mind that is reserved for God, when it becomes our primary focus, when it becomes the one thing that we worry about, right? I need to do this for me. I need to have my coffee in the morning for me. I need to take care of my body for me. Any of these focuses removes yourself from the focus that needs to be there. So what's up with all the blood and gore in the Bible? It's all about taking care of that physicalness, that body, because that is the barrier that was first placed between our relationship with God and us. So, now is a great opportunity to take time to discuss those physical barriers that we put between ourselves and God. Most of us here have the understanding. In fact, if I did a pop quiz and pulled somebody and just said, let's see, Justine, which comes first, the physical or the spiritual? I could do that with any one of you here. We have the proper perspective. But what does that look like on a practical level? What does that look like on a daily basis? When we go about our lives, when we spend time with our friends, our family, when we spend time at work, when we spend time in our activities, how does that play out? How does our focus on our spiritual lives play out in the reality of our physical lives? These are the questions that you need to ask yourselves. These are the questions that you need to understand. Anything that we place in more importance in that place that belongs to God, that we put between us and God, is something that needs to be dealt with. How do you do that? Go ahead and take the next 20 minutes. We'll discuss that in our cell groups.